Do breath trainers actually work, or are they a bit of a gimmick? In a previous video, I used the Powerbreathe Classic and was surprised to see improvements to not only my VO2 max, but my resting heart rate and heart rate variability. For this video, I bought the Airofit Pro 2.0 and trained with it for 5 months. We'll go through my results and whether spending 5 times more on a breath trainer was actually worth it. I was also joined by a colleague who was trying to raise her HRV and wanted to give breath training a go, and her experience was far less positive. If you're not familiar with breath trainers, they are resisted breathing devices, marketed as a dumbbell for your diaphragm. So they can make it harder to take a breath in, a breath out, or both. The Airofit allows air to travel in 2 directions, with the left cog controlling levels A to F to adjust the resistance when breathing in, and levels 1 to 6 on the right when breathing out. The app is relatively basic. You choose to train for sport or general well-being, and within 4 minutes, I was ready to go with their baseline lung test. The lung test consists of 3 stages: a maximal breath out, a maximal breath in, and lung capacity, exhaling as much as you can in a single breath. The summary screen will then show how you compare against your predicted performance for someone of your age, height, and weight. This was the most exciting part for me because the Powerbreathe had no way of measuring my performance, and I am definitely a numbers guy. So how did I get on? From an initial baseline of 184 for my in-breath, already well above their prediction for me, and 182 for my out-breath, I was able to add another 12% on my inspiratory pressure, peaking in the low 200s, though I only managed this by abandoning Airofit's own protocols and falling back on what I know from the research. For reference, my Powerbreathe results came from 30 maximal inhales morning and evening, 6 days a week, while the Airofit protocol was a bit of a mess, as you'll see later. The research papers on breath training nearly always involve 30 breaths in, under resistance, performed 5 to 7 days a week, up to twice per day, so in the region of 150 to 300 breaths per week. Airofit had spells with that level of intensity, but those would be followed by several weeks of not training it at all, and instead adding in a lot of padding from sessions aimed at lung capacity and relaxation. Interestingly, unlike the Powerbreathe, my VO2 max saw a slight decrease versus baseline, though my baseline measurements were taken in the middle of an intense block of winter training, so if there was an effect from the Airofit, it was smaller than seasonal fluctuations in my sprint training. My average HRV, as measured by my Oura Ring, did climb between phases 1, 2, and my own protocol, but this was not statistically significant, and neither was the drop in resting heart rate, given how much they naturally fluctuate. I do believe there is a small but noticeable improvement to HRV from breath training, but that it can get overshadowed by bigger factors like exercise volume, illness, and stress. The final metric is accessible lung capacity, the key word here being accessible. Since I don't have any condition that is restricting my existing lung capacity, such as asthma, using a breath trainer is unlikely to improve it for me, and indeed, across 5 months of training, it didn't move at all. This is effectively forced vital capacity, a reading I get on my spirometer, and it aligned with the 4.9 litres I eventually saw with Airofit after getting used to their device. Despite regularly testing this on my spirometer, my very first attempt with the Airofit was only 4.1 litres, so others reporting large improvements are possibly improving their ability to take the test rather than true gains to their accessible lung capacity. So let's take a quick look at where, in my opinion, Airofit has gone wrong. The Discover tab contains a complete library of sessions across areas like strength, lung capacity, and relaxation, with each having a beginner, intermediate, and expert difficulty level. The 7-day introduction included 10 of these sessions, often 2 to 3 minutes on beginner, before moving on to a 28-day protocol, which evolves every time you complete it. Part 1 had very little inhale strength, with 4 minutes on intermediate, equivalent to around 18 total breaths, with almost nothing in weeks 3 and 4. If you remember, I said 150 to 300 breaths per week was used in the research. This is topping out around 130 maximal inhales, and none of these other sessions are training that. Part 2 introduced Inspiratory Foundation, which is a 30-breath protocol, and I thought, finally, they've read the research. But strangely, it's set to minimal resistance across all difficulty levels. And again, weeks 3 and 4 ignore it completely. Not to mention exhale strength, which, despite being one of the 3 lung tests, didn't feature at all in parts 1, 2, or 3. Part 3 was very similar, and frustrated by the inconsistency, I abandoned the set protocol on day 14, continuing only with inhale and exhale strength, which led to my best results. So are devices like Airofit worth the money? Let's start with my colleague who set out to do a similar experiment on herself. Firstly, she developed pelvic floor issues while using the device. She also relies on breathwork to relax, and unsurprisingly, found that being made to mouth breathe through a piece of plastic actually increased her stress levels to the point where she stopped using it entirely after 3 weeks. For me, while I couldn't get this N=1 experiment to show any real-world improvements, I was certainly able to improve my max efforts, and despite already testing well above my predicted score for inspiratory pressure, I was able to improve it further with the Airofit device. The diaphragm and intercostal muscles are genuinely hard to train maximally in any other way, so aerobic training alone won't allow you to reach your lung performance ceiling. This means that breathing trainers can complement existing exercise routines, but shouldn't replace them. However, for the money they're asking, Airofit has added a lot of features that don't improve the core benefits of a breath trainer, with the relaxation sessions being the clearest example. Every other relaxed breathing protocol I've seen involves inhaling through the nose, so it seems entirely pointless, if not counterproductive, when done with the device. Overall, the protocol seemed completely misaligned with the breath training literature, and my best results came from abandoning it completely and training 6 days a week with 30 maximal inhales in the morning and 30 maximal exhales in the evening. Given the Powerbreathe protocol was inhale only, but 30 breaths both morning and evening, it's possible that half the inhale volume wasn't sufficient to see improvements to metrics like HRV and VO2 max. While I included maximal exhales to see if I could improve my score, the research indicates that exhale training only adds around 10 to 15% on top of what the inhale training delivers. The Airofit app also crashed very regularly, which seems to be a common complaint, and by the end I wasn't even bothering to switch it on to complete my 30 breaths. If you are looking to experiment with breath training, I'd recommend using a cheaper device like the Powerbreathe Classic. If you were to do 30 breaths once or twice a day, most of the research points to measurable improvements within the first 28 days, and I tend to notice a bump to my HRV by the end of the first week. While my results this time round weren't conclusive, I've hopefully shown that breath training does have potential value and that some of the more basic devices are well placed to deliver that. Thanks for watching.